What's happening here? 30,000 jobs on the line.
It certainly is an alarming number, but certainly government appears to have no other option. As they're looking for ways to stimulate the economy, they're also looking at ways to reduce government's core costs. And one of those costs that they have flagged is a bloated civil service. As you've pointed out, that they could save 20 billion rands by cutting 30,000 jobs. And from what we've heard, government has already, during the Cabinet Khotla this week, set aside a few billion rands to effect these retrenchments over the next 3 years. So the intent is already there. But the alarming thing is that this comes on the back of retrenchments elsewhere in the economy. And this certainly does not bode well for South Africans when the economy isn't growing as quickly as it should, because a lot of these people are really going to struggle to find work elsewhere.
Before we talk about what the unions or how the unions are going to react to this, let's talk about whether this is part of that mooted story about cabinet, the size of cabinet being reduced. Is this part and parcel of that bigger plan?
That it is. Remember when President Ramaphosa's first State of the Nation address, he was particularly vocal about the fact that he wanted to bring down the size of cabinet, and he's been criticized by opposition parties for not having done that already. So we understand from the Khotla again this week that the idea is to bring the size of cabinet or the number of ministries down from what it currently is to a number between 18 to 24.
Currently it's 34, if I'm correct.
So that gives you quite a large snip right there. You're going to see a number of ministries going to be amalgamated. We're also likely to see different functions of certain ministries perhaps spread across a number of others. So certainly interesting, and we all know that this has to be done. Cabinet is too big, but what comes on the back of that? The back of that means real people lose jobs as well. So there is no good news here, certainly not in the short term.
Has there been confirmation from government itself that indeed this is actually the plan within the next 3 years, these 30,000 public servants?
So look, we have very, very good sources on this. We also had the Deputy Minister of Finance speaking to us on the record last week in the Mail and Guardian, where he particularly said that the size of the government's payroll is, I think he used the word suicidal. So we know that this has been highlighted by core ministries as something that has to be looked at. And certainly that's what happened during the Khotla this week.
Talk to us about the ministries, Khadija. There has been talk that some ministries will be collapsed and some will be merged. Any idea yet which of these ministries are going to be as government tries to reduce the size of this bloated cabinet?
We're no closer to understanding where exactly those mergers and acquisitions will be made. But we do understand that there are a number of iterations and a number of plans, floating about. But I think another interesting that came out of the Khotla this week, and it was actually Minister Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, who was very vocal about the fact that several ministries are rendered rudderless because of ministers taking action on their directors general, leaving several ministries without leadership, without actually a functionary to do the job that they are meant to do. So we understand that this was, her point was made very forcefully and was also very warmly received by her colleagues. And the decision that appears to have been taken is that the power for ministers to fire and hire directors general will be removed, and instead this power be centralized within the presidency. So that's also an interesting tidbit coming out of there, and I think certainly also, comes back to your point about how exactly a future government is exactly going to be figured out in, over the next few months.
It's going to be a very interesting one. And I can just imagine that the public sector unions, which, by the way, are the most dominant unions, are the most influential right now, at least inside COSATU, which is the biggest federation in the country. How are they going to react? Unions like NEHAW, for example. Have you at least tried to get some sense as to
So there is, I mean, there's already a lot of alarm, on this. And of course, the president is basically on a collision course with COSATU, the same COSATU that championed him throughout last year as he sought to become president of the ANC. So there's certainly some very interesting politics at play. And
how is he going to get buy-in from COSATU?
I have no idea. I certainly wouldn't want to be in his shoes, but I think really what we're facing right now is a crisis in South Africa, and I think that the state of the economy ought to be, highlighted as our #1 crisis, because if we are not able to effectively find a way to get more jobs, get more people into jobs, we are likely looking at a disaster within the next 5-10 years.
Just finally, Khadija, something that I have been sort of also trying to confirm from my side, putting my feelers out, but I do have some people talking to me at the moment, sources, we'll keep it at that, that the positions that will be left by senior civil servants, such as, for example, you had the Home Affairs DG resigning, Kuseli Apleni recently, those positions are not going to be filled because there is no certainty as to whether, some of these departments are going to exist. Is that something that you also...
Exactly that. Exactly that. So we do believe that within the next few months, we are likely to see some action, in the reconfiguration of cabinet. So I think key positions are going to be put on hold until those plans are firmed up. But, obviously what we as the media need to watch is what the effect this may have or not have on service delivery or not. And certainly I think that, what we are faced with again is a moment of crisis. The economy really is in crisis. The number of people without jobs in South Africa is a national crisis. We need to put our heads together to figure out how we're going to fix this.
Khadija Patel, thank you very much for making the time to talk to us about that all-important story that is on your front page story, on your front page newspaper today, the Mail and Guardian. Thanks indeed.